Hi guys, in a bit of a different setting, I know, but yeah, I thought I'd try out this because I did a video recently and one of the clips I was kind of in this position and I thought, looks kind of interesting, so I thought I'd give it a go. I am with you today to share my November and December book wrap up. So as you may or may not know, I didn't upload a November book wrap up because I only read 2 books, and for me that's not a lot because I'm pretty much a bookworm and I just wasn't pleased with the amount I read in November, so I didn't think it was worthy enough to do a book wrap up. And the books that I read, although I enjoyed them, I didn't feel like doing separate reviews for them, so I thought I'd just do them in a a collected November-December wrap-up instead. Hopefully you don't mind too much about that, but yeah. So the first book of the 2 books that I read for November was A Field Guide to Demons, Fairies, Fallen Angels and Other Subversive Spirits by, who is it by? Carol K. Mack and Dinah K. Mack or Dynamack. This is like a factual, knowledgey book with, as you can see, fallen angels in it, fairies, all these kind of spiritual things, about cultures, beliefs in each individual things. It's one of those kind of books. I found it quite easy to read because of the chunks. The way it was separated was very, easy. But it did take me longer than expected to read the whole thing, and I think that's just because it wasn't, a consistent storyline or anything like that. It is a fact kind of book with the myths and legends and that sort of thing, so where it didn't have a cohesive storyline, it didn't make me want to pick it up constantly to, dive into it. I just didn't feel compelled to pick it up in a hurry. But although it was a slower read, it was interesting, and I probably could have read another book alongside it, but I don't really read more than one book at a time just because I like to concentrate on what I've got in front of me. But yeah, I do think this is the kind of book where you can read a more, stories-based book alongside it. It did portray a lot of religions or cultures' beliefs in terms of the supernatural world, which I thought was really cool, but a lot of the time it felt repeated. I think because different cultures have different versions of the same thing, I think they could have compiled it all into one thing. But other than that, the general filing of the book was really helpful. Sorry, I've got you onto a booby page, but the way it was split, like the categories and then the subcategories, it was really helpful to read and it was really easy to find my place. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. That was a really long-winded, crap description review thing. I don't know why. Hopefully it gets better. The second and last book I read in November was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This book was pure perfection. I don't really want to go into too much detail because I didn't really know what it was about when I picked it up and read it, which I think is the best thing to go into with these kind of novels. The main character and the characters surrounding the main character was so captivating. The story was excellent, really excellent. It was pure perfection. I have never read a book like this before, and I probably never will. I'm pretty much finding that with all the Neil Gaiman books that I've read so far, that they're all different, they're really different. Things that are entirely unique, and this is no exception. It was great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and you can check all these reviews out that I've gone into a bit more detail on Goodreads. I have linked to my profile down below, so you can add me as a friend if you want to, I don't mind. But yeah, this was one of the best books I've read this year, well, last year now, because it's 2015 when I'm filming it. 2nd of January, I believe. But yeah, really great book, and I'm glad that was the last book I read in November because it left an impression in my mind. So the first book I read in December is the second book in the Age of the 5 series by Trudy Canavan, and it is The Last of the Wild. I don't want to spoil too much for you because, as I said, it is the second book, and obviously if you haven't read the first one, I don't want to say anything that's going to ruin the experience for you. I will say it was definitely a much slower read than the first book was. It was less action-packed, less dramatic, less things going on in general, which I guess, I think this is only a 3-part series, but there's other series that include that is in the same world. But this main series, only 3 books, so it's a trilogy. You kind of, when you get the middle book, you kind of find that it's more of a connecting the first and the last book together, so I guess I shouldn't have really expected a lot of drama that was in the first book, but I don't know, it made for a slower read in my opinion. I did enjoy the development of certain races that were in this novel. It was really interesting to see certain character development, the building of their kind of environment, and finding out that they're not as mysterious as you would have thought, how they were described in the first book. So this was a really good addition, but it was definitely much slower than the first one. That got 3 out of 5 stars. The second book I read in December is Vikings, The Battle at the End of Time by Tony Allen. Now this is another one of those factual kind of books, telling all about the Nordic beliefs and Vikings in general. It's really interesting to read, like really interesting, and it was made better with the illustrations and photos that were used. It kind of made more sense when I could see what was being talked about. I don't think it was a very excellent source of information though for people wanting to learn about Vikings, because the certain terms were used but they weren't explained. So like a newbie, or just an average person that's kind of got a mild interest in these kind of things but don't know all the certain terms, it wasn't easy to understand, and I found myself not entirely focused the whole time I was reading it. Again, it might just be because it's one of those historical factual books. I'm used to fantasy and all that, but I do need a basis of where these fantasy elements are being built up from, so it's best for me to learn from sources like this. But yeah, it's just a different layout to what I'm used to, so it didn't captivate me as much as books that I tend to go for usually do. That was stuttered, and yeah. Next book. No, not next book. That got 2 out of 5 stars from me. Next book, or should I say graphic novel? Yes, I read Saga Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Won't say too much on this because I have a review video solely for this graphic novel coming to you soon. I will say I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, so that's a bit of a spoiler alert. I'll tell you all about it and all about my thoughts in the review coming up to you soon. So yeah, all in all, for the months of November and December, I read 5 books. Not my best months, I must admit, but I guess I was busy, or I was doing other things, or can't always be reading. I've got college work to take someplace, and I've got to have a social life of some kind. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be much better in this new year. So that's the end of this video, and I will speak to you in another one.